Your mic is off, by the way, Kufam. Your microphone is off.
Thanks. Thank you. My apology. I hope you guys can hear me now. And I will say hello again. And welcome to a very special session of the New Direction 2021. This session is entitled Measurement Invariance Across Gender in a Large-Scale English Test. And thankfully, we had three brilliant minds behind this study that are on here, present here today. They are Julian Zhu, Melvin Chen, and Bahid Azadot. All come from Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. Now, in language assessment, measurement invariance refers to the requirements that test and test items should function the same across different groups, such as gender or nationality. In this study, a multi-group confirmatory factor analysis, CFA, were used to investigate the measurement invariance of a large-scale primary school English test in Singapore. So if you have any questions for our speakers, do feel free to type them into the chat box, and we try to answer them as many as we can for the last 10 minutes of this session. I will now hand over to our speakers, Julian, Melvin, and Bahid. Please start by sharing your screen.
Thank you.
Thank you for your kind introduction. I will be sharing the screen. Okay, so the screen is on. Are we starting now or wait for 12:10?
I think we start, right?
We start right away. We don't wait for 12:10. Okay.
Time to us.
Okay, so we start now.
Go
Okay, thank you for your kind introduction. Yes, this is Julian, and I'm very happy to present our study entitled An Investigation of Measurement Invariance Across Gender in a Large-Scale English Test and New Directions. And my co-presenters today are Dr. Vahid and Dr. Chen. All three of us, yes, we are from National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University of Singapore, as you have kindly introduced. And by the way, Dr. Vahid is online with us today. So our presentation today starts with introducing the context of the study and proceeds to propose our research questions. Then we will introduce our methodology, report the results of the analysis, and conduct a discussion based on the results. And this is a context starting from measurement invariance. Measurement invariance is defined as the bipartite situation where there is no statistic difference between different parameters. And in language testing, measurement invariance is a requirement that tests should function the same across groups, such as gender, race, or nationality. And thus, it can provide evidence to test fairness. And from the statistic view, MI means that the latent variables are related to the observations in each of the groups with the same mathematical function. And another commonly used method is actually differential item functioning, DF, but there are differences between these two terms. MI assesses the psychometric equivalence of a construct, which is, like I said, a bipartite situation, but differential item functioning analysis is used to evaluate test fairness by calculating the number and finding out the location of those DF items. For MI techniques, yes, as I have written down on this slide, CFA, which is a case of structural equation modeling, is commonly used to assess MI. CFI is the confirmatory factor analysis. The theoretical framework of our study, the English test, is Carroll 1961. Carroll distinguished the skills, which are listening, speaking, reading, and writing, from components of knowledge, grammar, vocabulary, and phonology, and so on and so forth. But Carroll didn't indicate how skills and knowledge are related. It's still an unknown question. And according to the 1961 paper, testing for very specific items of language knowledge and skill is a type of approach with which we needed and to be tested. So based on the above discussion, we have both skills and language knowledge tested in this test. So one of the outcomes might be to investigate the relationship between skills and knowledge. Moving on to English. English is very, very important in Singapore. It is the medium of instruction in schools. That is to say, all subjects are taught in English, except, I think, mother tongue language and character and citizenship education. They are taught in the mother tongue, either Chinese, Malay, or Tamil in primary schools. So according to MOE, Ministry of Education, English is also the language of public administration, education, commerce, science and technology, and global communication. So candidates in Singapore, candidates in this primary school leaving examination are placed in various secondary schools based on the performance in this specific test, PSLE. But in our study, we conducted the test in the secondary schools. That means these candidates have passed the PSLE and they are placed in different streams of schools. So considering the importance of PSLE, we also use PSLE score in our analysis as a predictor. Okay. For gender in language testing, it is always a focal investigation area in language testing, gender. In history, numerous empirical studies have been conducted on the differentiated performance of gender. So these are some examples. And gender is reported to be a significant factor, but the results are inconsistent. Excuse me. As I said, the results are inconsistent. Back to Singapore, according to a report of MOE, between 2001 and 2011, girls performed slightly better than boys at the PSLE. So these two scholars in 2016, they suggested that further investigation can be done to compare the performance of male students and female students in PSLE and other English tests to say whether gender is advantaged or disadvantaged because of construct irrelevant variables. And under such a context, we formulated the following two research questions to guide our analysis. The first one is, do the PSLE scores explain the current English test for secondary school students? And second one is, do the 4 sections of the English test function equivalently between female and male test takers? Here is a methodology, specifically the instrument. This instrument is from Course 3 research program. This research program is conducted by, or the principal investigator of this project is Dr. Melvin Chen, which is also our co-presenter today. So this is a large-scale quantitative study of learning and teaching in Singapore in classrooms. And in this specific large-scale English test, there are 4 sections: grammar, vocabulary, comprehension, situational writing scores. And there are 15, 12, 6, and 2 items in these 4 subsections. And a random sample of 1,856 test takers who participated in this test was included in our study. Among them, 49.4, which is 919 of the test takers are male participants, and the others are the female participants. I can see they are almost evenly distributed. And in the secondary school stream choice, based on this batch of participants, 63.6, which means 1,206 are actually they want to express after PSLE test, and 491, which is 34.4% in normal academic, and the rest 199, which is 10.5%, entered normal technical. So these are the characteristics of our participants.
But for those of Shirley, and if I may add, for the audience who are not familiar with the schooling system in Singapore, after they after the kids take the PSLE exam in the primary school, and PSLE stands for primary school leaving exam, based on the grades on that exam, they will be grouped into 3 streams. One is the normal academic, the other one is normal technical, and the other one is express. The data that has been collected for this presentation is coming from all 3 streams of secondary school students.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's very useful information for our audience. So moving on our presentation, our procedure starts from the descriptive statistics. That is to say, prior to the CFA investigation, descriptive statistics on the total sample, female and male, were calculated by SPSS version 24, and this intends to provide necessary prerequisites for the following CFA model fitting and further discussion. And second, a one-factor CFA model was fitted to the data with AMOS version 24. CFA has been widely used to provide a confirmatory test of the measurement theory, and in our study, the theoretical framework provided by indicates that we can decomponent the language ability into different language knowledge and skills. So in this study, we have endogenous variables as grammar, vocabulary, comprehension, and situational writing scores. And we have exogenous variables, language ability, and 4 standard errors. And we also have PSLE scores as predictor. And then we will move on, we moved on to the multi-group CFA analysis. 4 models as configural model, metric model, scalar model, and structural model are used. So I will introduce them in detail in the latter slide. And here is the CFA model. As we can see from the figure, the endogenous variables and the exogenous variables are located in their own specific areas. And the PSLE English score is used as the predictor variable. So another thing I want to draw your attention is that test scores of each section was loaded on the latent factor named language ability, and the factor loading coefficient of grammar here was fixed at 1 for parameter estimation. And here is a result.
If I may say something, just add on something else here, Shirley, about this model. So yeah, you have this confirmatory factor analysis model on the right-hand side, and it consists of, as you said, the language ability and those 4 indicators: grammar, vocabulary, comprehension score, and situational writing scores. And they're basically composite scores. They have been validated using Rush measurement, etc. And now, as you see, there is a little bit of a circle, which is called a disturbance, indicated as E1. That's linked to language ability, and this is because we assume that the PSLE English grade can predict the language ability of students. Language ability of students has been measured by the tests that have been created in the project that Julian mentioned. So the test takers would take those language ability tests in secondary school. So we assume that their national exam records in primary school can predict their language performance in secondary school. That's why we have a rectangle indicated as PSLE English grades. That's their primary school, which is basically predicting language ability in primary school level. So we want to test whether this path model, let's call it a path model, will be valid or not. And that's what Shulin is going to present later. She has done the analysis, and there are a lot of interesting results there.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's move on to the descriptive statistics. As we can see, the data is normally distributed based on the skewness and kurtosis, and the mean scores indicate that the female groups are a bit higher, which corresponds to the MLE report I've mentioned. We also ran a rash analysis to look into the psychometric features of this test. The reliability is high for both person and item. The person separation indices also concurs with the fact that students are from different streams. But here is only 1.89, it's not 3 strictly. Okay, so for the model estimates, it is based on the Configural model. As we can see from the p-value and the standard and unstandard estimates, the prediction relationship from PSLE to language ability is significant, indicating that PSLE score could well predict their language ability. And our further investigation can be, for the other relationships, we also can see a significant p-value here. Yes, so that's the model estimates. And we also prepared the data for multi-group analysis using the function of manage groups from AMOS. And here is how we prepare the data for multi-group analysis. And here is the result. And this result is the result of fit statistics for one-factor CFA model. As we can see, we have the p-value here. We got the significant result across 4 models. And these 4 models, as I briefly mentioned, they are of different functions. The Configural model is the unconstrained model requiring the same factor loading regarding number of the latent factors. And the metric model is fixing only at the factor loadings, and the Scalar model means that the structural covariances is additionally fixing the variance of the factor to be the same across the groups. And the structural model down here means that the measurement residues is fixing the covariances and the variances of the errors to be the same. Simply speaking, these models are nested one by one. And we also have the CFI and NFI values and the RMSEA model values here. The criteria we used is Hu and Bentner 1999. As we can see, the models are well fitted. And then
and by nested, if I may add, by nested, we mean that if we move from configural model down in this table, to metric model, scalar, and structural, these models become increasingly more constrained in the sense that we constrain increasingly more parameters in them, just to ascertain whether the model with constraints will have a better fit or not. And if they don't have a better fit, then we would opt for a slightly less complex model, which has fewer constraint parameters. For example, if the structure model does not fit well compared with the null model or the unconstrained model, then we will go one step down and we will look into the fit of the scalar model. And then if it doesn't fit well, then we go one step further down and we'll look into the fit of the metric model. So we will try to find out whether the fit of any of these models is better. And then if we find that model, then that will become our path model across the 2 groups.
Yes, thank you very much for the additional information, which I might have to repeat some of them in this slide, because in this slide, we compare the measurement invariance models across gender in this way. So this is to answer the second research question, whether the measurement invariance holds So in our analysis, measurement invariance was determined by comparing the fit of the models across gender, given the assumption that the model to be correct one by one from top to bottom. For example, the Configural model is the nested model of the metric model, and the metric model was compared with the Configural model by assuming the Configural model to be correct. And the results here presented in the table shows that the differences between the metric model and the Configural model across gender is significant. And this indicates that adding constraints to the Configural model results in the unfit of the metric model. So the measurement invariance didn't hold at this level, but on the contrary, the other two levels, the comparison between Scalar model and metric model showed that the measurement invariance was present at the Scalar level. So this is one assumption by another assumption. So let's move on to the discussion and conclusion. As we have mentioned, the objective of this study is to examine the measurement invariance in this large-scale English test across gender. And this multi-group CFA analysis results support the configural equivalence. However, the results show that the metric model doesn't hold, indicating that factor loadings were not equal between male and female test takers. So we have, the results that only certain levels of measurement invariance hold makes it safe to conclude that the null hypothesis of this investigation is partially rejected, implying that the test developers should further examine this test. And we have three conclusions here. The first one is the PSLE score can predict the student's performance in this English test. And the second discussion we want to talk about is the lack of measurement invariance does not necessarily represent unfairness in a test, because test fairness is defined on a continuum, meaning it is a matter of degree, but measurement invariance is defined as an ideal clear-cut yes or no hypothesis. So there are only slim chances of being met at all levels of measurement. All measurement levels are hold. So therefore, further investigation is required to decide whether this lack of measurement invariance in this CFA analysis could affect test fairness or not. And the last one is we could always continue to invest test fairness based on the present multi-group CFA analysis. As we have mentioned, the hypothesis is partially rejected. So it means that we could continue the study by releasing constraints on one loading at a time to test the mean differences with the partially invariant factor. So this is our recommendation. We also can, it is also feasible to adopt item response theory models like rash-based investigation to investigate like differential item functioning, which can be a complementary method to explain whether the lack of measurement invariance affects test fairness. So this is our presentation. We welcome all kinds of questions.
Let me add one last final remark about the model. If you could go back to the path model that you were presenting. What I would like to add on here is that we didn't, one further. I think there was previous slide. Yes, this one. What we have done in this analysis is to use composite scores of grammar score, vocabulary, etc. Now, for future research, it would be very interesting to use the actual item level scores rather than composite scores, because when you aggregate scores on a test, you also aggregate the error measurements of error, standard errors of measurement on the test, and as a result, what you see here, grammar score, is not a pure grammar score. It has got some error in it. So our suggestion for future research is that with a bigger sample size, it would be possible and perhaps desirable to include those item level statistics into the model to figure out whether the measurement invariance holds. And as Julian said, it would also be nice to constrain one parameter at a time to figure out whether constraining that parameter would result in a better fit or not. And if it does or does not, we can follow up with further analysis like estimating the Z standardized scores, which basically represent the differences between the two groups you are measuring. It could be 3 groups or 4 groups, depending on your sample size. Basically, the larger the sample, the higher the possibility of inclusion of more groups. So I think that brings us to the end of this presentation. If Julian doesn't have anything else to add, we can perhaps stop here and wait for questions if there are any questions or suggestions.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a very insightful presentation. Thank you again, our 2 excellent speakers. I do believe we have a few questions from the audience. The first one, actually, I had the first one, and then thank you very much, Dr. Vahid, again, for just answering before I have a chance to ask about it, what is future area of future research. And I think that's a very good recommendation. But now I will give the opportunity to Mark Chapman. He's had the question for use at, I may please quote, as items are developed for this test, are they checked for differential item functioning, DIF, by genders? Would you like me to?
Yeah, I can see the question too. Thank you for communicating the question to us. So, Rachel, do you want to give it a go, or would you like me to take this?
I personally, for my analysis, I don't know whether the other investigators or co-investigators have done that. For me, I just run the rash analysis on reliability and fit statistics. I didn't go into differential item functioning in this specific study. So do you have any other information, Dr. Vahid?
Yeah, so we have not formally done differential item functioning. And the main purpose of and I know where this question is coming from. It's important to look into def or measurement invariance at item level, which we didn't present in this study. So I think what Mark is trying to get at is before doing measurement invariance at the scale level, which we have done at an aggregate level, it would be good or even necessary to look at differential item functioning or measurement invariance analysis at the item level. That's a great point. I think that's the pragmatic function of the question. Yes, we should do that, and we hope that we can do that in the future and look into the measurement invariance or differential item functioning by gender across items.
Excellent.
Yes.
That actually, Rachel, would you like to have something else?
Oh, it's just Dr. Vahid reminds, what he said reminds me that me and Dr. Vahid actually conducted a comparative study between differential item functioning and mimic 2 years ago about. Yeah, it was an article, but yeah. Yeah, sorry, you go on, please.
Okay, actually that, if you don't mind me, I want to dig a bit deeper in that. Is there anything that you would like to do differently if you do this research again, as we already quite related to that topic?
Sorry, my internet got broken up. Can you repeat the question again?
Is there as you know, this is a very interesting point from Mark. I'm just wondering if is there anything else you would like to do differently for that research if you have chance to do it again? If you did it again,
probably do it at the item level, as I mentioned. We probably do it at the item level, but again, it's not that straightforward if you do the analysis at the item level, because some of the items are binary, some of the items are polytomous, and for parameter estimation, we might encounter some issues with Amos. We might have to do Bayesian analysis, which basically opens the door for a whole new group of analyses.
Absolutely. Okay, wonderful. I do believe we had one more questions from Martina. Is there any study that shows the construct of the PSLE test represent well student language abilities? Is there enough item to show reliability of the test? Let me pass that question to you so you have a second look at it.
PSLE represents students' language ability. Well, that's a great question. I'm not sure if there is any published research on the large-scale tests in Singapore. That's surprising. I'm not aware of anything. Shulian, are you aware of any research study that talks about PSLE or?
Yes, actually, I cited one of them, Low and Shin, LOH and SHIH. They conducted, I think it's a test evaluation. This interesting,
it's a test review, yeah.
Yeah, it's a test review on language assessment quarterly in 2016. So it is entitled, it's really entitled just the English language test of the Singapore PSLE. So it's really just a test review. But in this test review, they also examine the fairness of the test in its validity, absence of bias, access, administration, and everything. So if you are interested, you can go to that paper and maybe some cited papers in that specific paper. So I think that's my recommendation.
Yeah, what I would like to add on is the paper is like a review from the personal viewpoint of the authors of the paper. It's not based on the data from the test itself. So as to whether there is a good level of reliability in the test and whether the construct of PSLE is represented well, personally, I don't know. I'm not sure if there's any research published on that. And that's a good point because, by the way, the PSLE scores were reported by the students who participated in the study, meaning that we didn't have access to the scores of PSLE, meaning that the students reported them to us. Yeah, it's not that we didn't give the PSLE test to them.
Yeah, that's true. It happens not only in Singapore, it happens in China too. Because my another interest area is interpreting, which translation and interpreting. And we have a large scale interpreting test in China. I tried multiple times to get access to the database, but every time I was rejected, even though they invited me to be the test evaluators every time, and I worked for them. I mean, part-time worked for them, but it's not that easy to get access to the database. So personally, I really hope that the test developers and the researchers can better cooperate with each other. Yeah, that's my my personal wish.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm sorry to hear that, but maybe a shout out to anyone out there. Maybe we can help you in the future to get the access there. Sometimes it's just need time.
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay, well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Well, let's bring us to the end of the session. Please leave us some feedback on this particular section by answering the 2 short questions in the survey tab next to the chat box that you can see on the platform. We thank you for your participation. We thank our speaker for an excellent presentation again, and hope you all enjoy the rest of the conference today. Goodbye for now.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.